Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time to a place where the air hangs thick with steam and the scent of herbs, where naked strangers crowd together in wooden tubs, and where your modern sensibilities about personal space and hygiene are about to be thoroughly challenged. You've just pushed open the heavy wooden door of a medieval bathhouse, and the wave of humid, fragrant air that hits your face is just the first of many culture shocks you're about to endure. Between the questionable water quality, bizarre medical practices, and the social complexities you're about to navigate, your chances of emerging from a week in a medieval bathhouse with your health or dignity intact are slimmer than a peasant's coin purse. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing that strikes you as you enter the medieval bathhouse is not just the warmth, it's the noise. Voices echo off stone walls, attendants call out to customers, and the constant splash of water creates an acoustic atmosphere entirely unlike the hushed, reverent tones of modern spas. It's the middle of the day in what historians believe is around the year 1350, and you've arrived at one of the more reputable establishments in a mid-sized European town. Already, your 21st century nose wrinkles involuntarily. The smell isn't exactly unpleasant. It's a complex bouquet of wood smoke from the fires heating the water, mixed with various herbs thrown into the baths, human bodies in various states of cleanliness, and something else you can't quite identify yet, though you'll later realize it's the natural aroma of minerals from the water source, combined with a faint hint of mildew that permeates the wooden structures. You're standing in an antechamber where an attendant, a stocky woman with surprisingly strong arms, is assessing you with experienced eyes. "First visit?" she asks, though your wide eyes and hesitant posture have already given you away. You nod, and she points to a shelf where you can leave your belongings. Unlike modern facilities, there are no lockers here, just open shelves where your possessions will sit in full view of anyone passing by. The concept of security is limited to social pressure and the watchful eyes of the bathhouse staff, who, you'll soon learn, miss very little that happens in their domain. You're directed to undress completely, which is the first of many privacy boundaries you'll cross this week. Public nudity in the medieval bathhouse isn't sexualized or embarrassing, it's simply practical. Men and women often bathe together, though practices vary widely depending on the location and time period. In some regions and eras, bathhouses strictly segregate by gender. In others, mixed bathing is the norm. Historians still argue whether the famous mixed bathing practices depicted in medieval artwork were accurate representations or more figurative illustrations meant to emphasize the moral dangers of bathhouses. As you nervously remove your clothing, you realize you're still wearing your watch and other modern accessories. You quickly hide them in your bundled clothes, aware that explaining a digital timepiece to medieval Europeans might complicate your week considerably. The attendant hands you a thin cloth, not for modesty, but for you to sit on in the steam rooms. She points toward the main bathing area, a large room with several wooden tubs of varying sizes, some large enough to accommodate up to 10 people. You step gingerly across the wet stone floor, already realizing that modern slip and fall safety measures are non-existent here. The smooth stones have been worn down by centuries of wet, bare feet, creating natural grooves that help channel water toward crude drainage systems. You're actually walking on relatively advanced medieval engineering, though it doesn't feel particularly sophisticated as you try to avoid slipping. The water in the nearest tub looks questionable. It's not filthy, but it's certainly not the crystal clear, chlorinated water you're accustomed to. There's a faint tint to it, herbal infusions meant to provide health benefits and mask the less pleasant aspects of communal bathing. The tub is currently occupied by 3 middle-aged men engaged in animated conversation, who barely notice as you hesitate nearby. An attendant notices your uncertainty and guides you instead toward a bench where you can receive an initial scrubbing before entering the shared water. This, you'll later realize, is a privilege. Many establishments don't bother with preliminary cleaning, but this bathhouse caters to a slightly more discerning clientele. The attendant picks up a coarse cloth and a container of soft soap, a luxury item made from ash and fat, and gestures for you to sit. "You're not from around here," she observes, not a question, but a statement as she notes your confusion with the procedures. "First, we clean the skin, then you soak. Better for everyone." She demonstrates by rubbing the rough cloth against your arm with surprising vigor. You wince your modern skin, accustomed to gentle cleansers and loofah sponges, is unprepared for what amounts to an exfoliation session with what feels like fine-grained sandpaper. As you endure this preliminary scrubbing, you observe the bathhouse layout. Beyond the main room with its soaking tubs, you can see doorways leading to steam rooms, resting areas, and what appears to be a small kitchen or service area. The architecture is simple but effective. Thick stone walls help retain heat. High windows provide natural light while limiting drafts, and the wooden tubs are built with craftsmanship that has largely been lost to modern manufacturing. What you don't see are any of the amenities you might expect. No shower facilities to rinse before entering the shared water, no chlorination systems, no filtration equipment. The water is heated by fires burning beneath metal cauldrons in an adjacent room, then carried in buckets to fill the tubs, a labor-intensive process that explains why bathing was an occasional luxury rather than a daily necessity for most medieval people. You're about to experience firsthand why modern humans, with our expectations of privacy, hygienic standards, and personal space, would find surviving a week in a medieval bathhouse a challenging proposition indeed. And this is just your first hour. As you're finally directed toward one of the smaller wooden tubs, you quickly discover that medieval bathhouses operate on a complex social hierarchy that would make a modern country club look egalitarian. The largest, cleanest tub near the heat source is occupied by 2 well-dressed men who, despite being as naked as everyone else, somehow maintain an aura of authority. Their conversation drops to whispers when others approach, and attendants hover nearby, ready to fulfill their slightest requests. That's Master Wilhelm, the cloth merchant, and his business partner. Your scrubber informs you with a respectful nod in their direction. They always take the prime tub on trading days. You're learning your first important lesson about medieval bathhouses. The water might make everyone equally wet, but it doesn't make everyone equal. You cautiously lower yourself into your assigned tub, already occupied by what appears to be a craftsman of some kind, his hands calloused and stained with dye or ink, and an older woman who nods at you politely before continuing to scrub her arms with a pumice stone. The water is hotter than you expected, not scalding, but certainly warmer than modern health regulations would permit in a public facility. You realize this heat is a luxury, representing countless hours of labor, chopping wood, maintaining fires, hauling water. New face, the craftsman observes, sizing you up. Passing through or setting up shop. The question isn't just friendly conversation, it's an assessment of where you fit in the social order. Medieval communities were tightly knit, suspicious of outsiders, and highly stratified. Your answer could determine how you're treated not just in the bathhouse, but throughout the town. You mumble something noncommittal about just visiting, and he seems satisfied enough, launching into a complaint about a customer who failed to pay for his services. The older woman occasionally interjects with local gossip, and you realize that the bathhouse serves as more than just a cleaning facility. It's an information exchange, a networking hub, a social club. The tub you're sharing holds water that has already been used by several people before you. Medieval bathhouses did change the water, but not nearly as frequently as modern sensibilities would demand. The economics simply didn't support heating fresh water for each patron. Instead, there was a hierarchy to water usage. The wealthiest and most powerful bathed in fresh water, which was then used by merchants and craftspeople, then by laborers, and sometimes finally by the poor, who might gain access to the bathhouse on certain days or for reduced fees. Historians confirm that in many medieval European cities, the social pecking order was literally reflected in water quality. In the German town of Nuremberg, documentation from 1405 shows that bathhouse operators were required by law to change the water at specified intervals and could charge premium rates for first water bathing. The truly wealthy, however, often owned private bathing facilities in their homes, using public bathhouses only for social or business purposes. As you soak, you notice another layer to the social complexity. Personal attendants hover around the wealthier patrons, while most bathers tend to their own needs. Some of these attendants are bathhouse employees, but others are personal servants who accompanied their masters to handle their clothing, accessories, and to provide security for their valuables. You, without an attendant, are clearly marked as either a person of modest means or an uninformed outsider. The woman sharing your tub eventually introduces herself as Margaret, a midwife. First time in a bathhouse, she asks, noticing your discomfort with the communal nature of the experience. When you nod she laughs. You'll get used to it. Besides, it's good for the humors to mingle in the waters. Balances the body's essences. You've just encountered your first bit of medieval medical theory. The belief that the body contained 4 humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, that needed to remain in balance for good health. In the corner of the room, a new group arrives, their clothing, what little you glimpsed before it was stored away, marked them as wealthy. The bathhouse staff scrambles to prepare accommodations, clearing out less important customers from a desirable tub. You watch as a family of apparent means is led to a screened-off section, a rare nod to privacy available only to those who could afford it. The bailiff's family, Margaret whispers, noting your curious gaze. They come monthly. Always take the private section. His wife doesn't like being seen. This reveals another aspect of bathhouse culture. While nudity was generally accepted as part of the bathing process, those of higher status could often purchase additional privacy if desired. The craftsman in your tub, who has introduced himself as Thomas, a bookbinder, gives you some unsolicited advice. If you're staying in town, best to establish a relationship with one of the bath attendants. Slip them a coin or two, and they'll make sure you get decent water and a good scrubbing. He lowers his voice further, and they'll keep an eye on your belongings. Not everyone here is honest, especially on public discount days. This casual mention of theft reminds you of your vulnerability. Your modern possessions, hidden in your clothes, represent unimaginable wealth in this time period. A simple wristwatch contains more precise engineering than the town's best clockmaker could produce in a lifetime. You make a mental note to be more vigilant about your belongings. As you soak, the social choreography of the bathhouse continues around you. You notice how people defer to certain individuals, how conversations include some while excluding others, how the staff treats different customers with varying levels of deference. There are unspoken rules about who can join which tub, who speaks first, who is offered the small luxuries like freshly steeped herbal infusions for the water. Some of these social distinctions might seem subtle to modern eyes, but they were clearly legible to medieval people. The way someone carried themselves, their speech patterns, the condition of their skin and hands, all provided clear signals about their place in society. The bathhouse, with its enforced nudity and proximity, didn't erase these distinctions, but sometimes heightened them, stripping away the more obvious markers of clothing, while leaving the ingrained behaviors and physical signs of one station. You're starting to realize that surviving a week here isn't just about enduring the physical conditions. It's about navigating a complex social landscape where a misstep could result in anything from mild embarrassment to dangerous consequences. As a person with no established place in this hierarchy, you're essentially invisible to the higher ranks and potentially suspicious to everyone else. Margaret seems to read your thoughts. Come back tomorrow around midday, she suggests, as she prepares to leave the tub. That's when most of the tradespeople come. Good folk, not too particular about who they share water with. It's a small kindness guidance on when you might find the most accepting social environment, and you appreciate it more than she knows. As new patrons enter and others leave, you witness the bathhouse's constant social recalibration. Each arrival and departure shifts the dynamics slightly, like an elaborate dance where everyone instinctively knows their part. Everyone except you, that is. After soaking in the communal tub for what seems like an appropriate amount of time, you decide to explore the other services offered by the bathhouse. Your skin is pruning, and the water has cooled considerably. No modern temperature regulation here to keep things consistently comfortable. As you rise from the water, you realize there are no towels waiting. Instead, you're expected to use the small cloth you were given earlier to pat yourself semi-dry, or simply air dry in the warm environment of the bathhouse. You make your way toward what appears to be a grooming area, where several patrons are receiving various personal care services. Here, you encounter medieval hygiene practices that would make a modern health inspector immediately shut down the establishment. A barber surgeon, these professions were often combined in medieval times, is offering haircuts, beard trims, and more alarmingly, tooth extractions and bloodletting services. The same tools move from person to person, with at best a quick wipe on a cloth between uses. Care for a shave? The barber asks, noticing your observation. Just had my blade sharpened yesterday. Clean as a whistle. Your modern knowledge of germ theory makes you instinctively step back from the blood-specked razor that has already served several customers today. The barber misinterprets your hesitation as concern about his skill. Don't worry, he assures you. I've been cutting at this bathhouse for 12 years. Steady hand. You politely decline and move on, only to witness another hygiene practice that makes your skin crawl. A bath attendant is using a strigil, a curved metal tool, to scrape oil, dirt, and dead skin from a patron's body. After completing the service, the attendant gives the tool a cursory wipe and immediately begins using it on the next customer. Cross-contamination isn't just common here, it's the standard operating procedure. Near the scraping station, an older man with an authoritative presence is examining several patrons' skin conditions. This, you learn, is the local monk physician who visits the bathhouse weekly to offer medical advice and treatments. Currently, he's recommending a poultice of moldy bread and herbs for a pustulant sore on a woman's arm, a remedy that, while disgusting to modern sensibilities, actually contains the medieval precursor to antibiotic treatment. Certain molds do indeed contain compounds that combat infection, though the application method leaves much to be desired. You overhear one bathhouse regular explaining to another patron that the secret to good health is a balance of bathing practices. Too frequent immersion weakens the constitution. He insists with the confidence of someone repeating conventional wisdom. But regular steam and scraping keeps the pores open and prevents illnesses from entering the body. While completely wrong by modern medical understanding, this theory was widespread in medieval Europe, with many physicians actually cautioning against excessive bathing as potentially harmful. In one corner, you notice an attendant crushing herbs and flower petals in a mortar. These will be added to bath water for their supposed medicinal or fragrant properties. Some additions, like certain floral essences, probably did make the bathing experience more pleasant. Others, like powdered deer antler, believed to enhance virility when added to bath water, did absolutely nothing except increase the price of the service. The most disturbing hygiene practice becomes apparent when you watch the process of tub cleaning between higher status clients. Rather than emptying and refilling the tub, a labor-intensive process reserved for only the wealthiest patrons, attendants simply skim the surface water to remove visible debris. Then add a bucket of fresh hot water and a handful of herbs to refresh the appearance and scent. The majority of the water remains unchanged, accumulating the bodily oils, dead skin cells, and other substances from previous bathers. In the steam room, conditions are even more concerning. The hot, moist environment created by pouring water over heated stones is ideal for breeding bacteria and fungi. Multiple naked bodies press close together on wooden benches that have absorbed years of human sweat and oils. Respiratory infections could easily spread in this enclosed space filled with steam and shared breath. One patron repeatedly coughs without covering his mouth, and you find yourself trying to calculate how quickly airborne pathogens might circulate in a poorly ventilated medieval steam room. Communal bathing implements are shared without hesitation. The same scrubbing brushes, cloths, and bathing vessels move from person to person. Even personal items like combs or nail cleaning tools are casually lent between patrons. You watch as a woman borrows a hair comb from her neighbor, uses it thoroughly, and returns it without any cleaning beyond picking out the most visible hairs. Perhaps most shocking to modern sensibilities is the casual approach to bodily functions. While the bathhouse does have designated areas for waste elimination, typically semi-private corners with drain holes or basic chamber pots, the standards for when one should excuse oneself to use these facilities seem remarkably relaxed. You witness one elderly patron urinating directly into the drainage channel while continuing his conversation, apparently seeing no need to interrupt his social interactions for such a mundane bodily function. After several hours in the bathhouse, you've developed a strategy for minimizing your exposure to the worst hygiene risks, avoiding the most crowded tubs, declining shared implements when possible, and subtly positioning yourself upstream from other bathers when sharing water. But complete avoidance is impossible in this environment where communal use is the fundamental operating principle. The medieval understanding of cleanliness focused primarily on visible dirt and pleasing aromas rather than microscopic contaminants. A bath that left one's skin free of visible grime and smelling of herbs was considered perfectly successful, regardless of the bacterial colonies happily multiplying in the warm water. Historians have found evidence that some medieval people did intuitively understand certain aspects of contagion, avoiding sick individuals or items they had touched. But without germ theory, These precautions were inconsistent and often based on incorrect assumptions about how diseases spread. One of the more peculiar hygiene practices you observe involves ear cleaning. A specialist attendant moves through the bathhouse, offering to remove earwax using slender metal tools. The same tools are used from person to person, with only the most cursory cleaning between clients. You watch in horror as the ear cleaner extracts a substantial amount of wax from one patron's ear, wipes the tool on a cloth that already bears the evidence of many previous cleanings, and then approaches you with a smile, tool extended, clears the hearing and prevents vapors from entering the brain, she assures you, noticing your hesitation. Only 2 pennies. You manage to politely decline, though she seems genuinely puzzled by your reluctance to partake in what is clearly a popular service. As the day progresses, the water in all but the most expensive tubs takes on an increasingly questionable appearance. What began as reasonably clear, urban-fused water has become cloudy with various human contributions. Yet, new patrons continue to arrive and enter these same tubs without apparent concern, a stark reminder of how different the standards of cleanliness were in medieval times. By the end of your first full day, you're acutely aware that surviving a week in a medieval bathhouse will require more than just tolerating the social complexities. It will demand that you somehow avoid the myriad infections and skin conditions that must surely be flourishing in this petri dish of communal hygiene. And you've only just begun your stay. By your second day at the bathhouse, you begin to recognize the true power players in this steamy microcosm, the bath attendants. Far from being mere servants, these individuals control nearly every aspect of the bathing experience and wield surprising influence over the establishment's social dynamics. You've learned that cultivating good relationships with them might be your key to surviving the week with your health somewhat intact. The head bath attendant, a broad-shouldered woman named Greta with forearms like a blacksmith and eyes that miss nothing, rules the main bathing hall with unquestioned authority. She assigns tubs, schedules water changes, and with subtle gestures directs her staff to attend more carefully to favored clients or to neglect those who have earned her disapproval. You watched yesterday as she smoothly relocated an argumentative merchant to a cooling tub in the drafty corner, all while maintaining a facade of attentive service. Been running this house for 16 years, Thomas, the bookbinder, tells you when he notices you observing her. Started as a water carrier when she was just a girl. Now even the guild masters think twice before crossing her. You make a mental note to stay on Greta's good side. The attendants themselves represent a distinct working class within medieval society. Most come from the lower social orders, but their specialized knowledge and access to the wealthy give them a unique position in the community hierarchy. They're neither entirely servants nor true craftspeople, occupying a middle ground of service providers with specialized skills. Some have worked in bathhouses their entire lives, beginning as children carrying water or collecting discarded clothing, gradually learning the arts of massage, hair removal, and cupping. You're approached by a young male attendant named Jakob, who offers a massage service. His hands are calloused from years of kneading tense muscles, and he carries a small vial of oil infused with rosemary and lavender. Good for the circulation, he assures you. Helps prevent the joint stiffness that comes from too much soaking. Deciding this might be safer than some of the other services you've observed, you agree to the massage. Jakob leads you to a wooden bench in a semi-private alcove where other patrons are receiving similar treatments. His technique is surprisingly effective, though considerably more vigorous than modern massage therapy. Medieval massage wasn't about gentle relaxation. It was believed to physically move stagnant fluids through the body, redistribute the humors, and stimulate proper organ function. As Jakob works on a particularly tight shoulder muscle, he casually mentions, "You've caught Greta's eye, you know. Not many newcomers know to respect the water hierarchy. Most just blunder in and take whatever tub they please. You realize your cautious observation yesterday has accidentally earned you some credit with the staff." Jakob continues, "She's put you down for the third tub tomorrow. Much better water, usually reserved for regular guild members." While receiving your massage, you observe the complex dance of the attendants throughout the bathhouse. They aren't organized by modern job descriptions, but rather by a medieval system of apprenticeship and specialization. The youngest workers, some appearing to be no more than 8 or 9 years old, handle the simplest tasks, carrying fresh water, removing used water, fetching items for patrons, and keeping the fires stoked beneath the heating cauldrons. These children work alongside adults in a seamless age integration that would violate countless modern labor laws. The intermediate attendants handle general bathing assistance, hair washing, and basic grooming services. The most skilled and experienced staff provide specialized services like cupping, applying heated glass cups to the skin to create suction, bloodletting, complex hairstyling, and medical treatments. Many of these specialized attendants maintain their own tools and receive direct payment from customers rather than wages from the bathhouse owner, operating almost as independent contractors within the bathhouse walls. Been apprenticed since I was 7, Jakob tells you as he works on your lower back. Started carrying water buckets, then learned scrubbing from my uncle. Been doing massage work for 6 years now. At your question about his age, he shrugs. 22 winters, or thereabouts. My mother wasn't one for keeping records. You're struck by how different this career trajectory is from modern employment. No formal education, no certification process, no regulatory oversight, just years of practical apprenticeship, leading to increasing skill and responsibility. The knowledge of proper massage techniques, beneficial herb combinations, and even rudimentary anatomy has been passed down through generations of bathhouse workers, rarely written down, but carefully preserved through direct instruction. As you finish your massage and prepare to return to the bathing area, Jakob offers some advice. If you're staying the week, you should establish a routine. makes things easier for everyone. Same time each day, same services if you can afford them. The regulars all have their schedules. This insight into bathhouse operations helps explain the seemingly choreographed movements you observed yesterday. Many patrons are indeed following long-established personal routines. Back in the main hall, you notice a female attendant named Clara, who specializes in hair removal, a service in high demand among both men and women during medieval times. Unlike modern waxing or laser treatments, medieval depilation often involved caustic chemical mixtures made from ingredients like quicklime or painful plucking processes using primitive tweezers. Clara's reputation, you learn from eavesdropping on nearby conversations, rests on her relatively painless technique and her discretion regarding the more intimate areas some patrons wish to have depilated. Historians still argue about the extent of body hair removal practices in different regions and time periods of medieval Europe. Some scholarly evidence suggests that pubic hair removal was common among the upper classes by the 15th century, while other sources indicate it was primarily associated with prostitution or considered a regional preference. What's certain is that in bathhouses like this one, the service was readily available for those who desired it. Another specialized attendant catches your attention, an elderly man with remarkably steady hands who performs ear cleaning and minor surgical procedures. He's currently using a slender silver instrument to remove something from a wincing patron's ear canal with practiced precision. Despite your modern concerns about sterilization, you have to admit his technique appears skillful. That's Master Edwin, Jakob informs you, noticing your interest. Trained with a surgeon in Paris before his eyes weakened. Can't perform major surgeries anymore, but no one has a lighter touch for the small work. You're beginning to understand that the bath attendants aren't just service providers. They're the preservers and practitioners of medieval health care, grooming standards, and social connections. Their knowledge, passed through generations of practical experience rather than formal medical training, represents a different, but no less complex understanding of the human body than modern medicine provides. As the day progresses, you also notice the attendants functioning as informal information brokers. They move between social groups, carrying not just fresh water and towels, but also gossip, business opportunities, and political news. Greta, in particular, seems to know everyone's business, which merchants are struggling financially, which craftsmen are seeking new apprentices, which marriages might soon be arranged. This information economy operates in whispers behind the louder splashing and conversation of the bathhouse. Bath attendants know more secrets than priests, Thomas confides when he catches you watching this exchange of information. People talk freely here, and the attendants hear everything. Best remember that before you share anything you wouldn't want repeated. It's sound advice in this environment where privacy is a physical impossibility, and where the staff have both access to all social classes and the mobility to carry information between them. By the end of your second day, you've learned that the bath attendants are far more than the simple servants they might appear to be at first glance. They're skilled practitioners, social mediators, information brokers, and in many ways, the true arbiters of the bathhouse experience. Your survival for the remainder of the week will depend largely on navigating these relationships successfully, cultivating favor with the right attendants while maintaining appropriate boundaries with others. As you prepare to leave for the day, Greta herself hands you your clothing with a subtle nod of acknowledgement. "Tomorrow, then," she says simply, confirming Jakob's information about your upgraded tub assignment. In this small gesture, you recognize that you've gained a toehold in the complex social ecosystem of the medieval bathhouse, a necessary first step in your week-long survival challenge. On your third day at the bathhouse, you decide to explore the medical services that form a significant part of medieval bathing culture. The line between hygiene, healthcare, and what modern people would consider pseudoscience is practically non-existent here, with the bathhouse functioning as a wellness center, doctor's office, and beauty salon, all rolled into one steamy, unhygienic package. You've been directed to the treatment corner, a section of the bathhouse where various health services are performed in full view of other patrons. Privacy for medical procedures is apparently a luxury that hasn't been invented yet. The first thing you notice is a middle-aged man having heated cups applied to his back by a specialist bath attendant. These cups, made of glass, ceramic, or sometimes animal horns, create suction when heated and applied to the skin, drawing blood to the surface in dark, circular bruises that medieval practitioners believe indicate the removal of bad humors from the body. Cupping is excellent for drawing out corruptions, explains the attendant performing the procedure, noticing your interest. See how dark the marks are. That shows the treatment is working well. While modern medicine has largely dismissed cupping as pseudoscience, it remains one of the less dangerous procedures offered in the medieval bathhouse. At least the cups are usually heated between uses, providing some minimal sterilization. Next to the cupping station, a more alarming procedure is underway. A barber surgeon is performing bloodletting on an elderly patron who appears pale and weak, precisely the sort of person who shouldn't be losing additional blood by modern medical understanding. Using a sharp blade, the practitioner makes a small incision in the man's arm and collects the flowing blood in a calibrated bowl. Medieval medical theory held that many illnesses resulted from an imbalance of the four humors, with bloodletting being a primary method to reduce excess blood and restore balance. Twice monthly bleeding keeps the constitution sound, the barber surgeon tells his patient. Your color will improve by tomorrow. Historians have documented that bloodletting was so common in medieval Europe that specialized calendars were published indicating the best days for the procedure based on astrological signs and seasonal considerations. The specific location of bloodletting on the body was often determined by which internal organ was believed to be causing problems, with elaborate charts mapping body locations to corresponding organs. You cautiously approach a less invasive-looking treatment area where an herbalist is preparing various medicinal baths. Large ceramic jars contain dried herbs, flowers, and substances you can't identify. The herbalist, a woman with knowledge passed down through generations rather than formal medical training, carefully measures ingredients into cloth bags that will be steeped in hot bath water. "What ails you?" she asks directly, sizing you up with experienced eyes. When you hesitate, she continues, "I can see your complexion is too sanguine, likely an excess of blood humor. A cooling bath of chamomile, lemon balm, and crushed roses would help restore your balance." While her diagnosis is based on now debunked medical theories, the herbs she recommends actually do have mild sedative and anti-inflammatory properties that might indeed make you feel better after bathing. You decide this is one of the safer treatments available and agree to the herbal bath. The herbalist nods approvingly and prepares a sachet, expertly tying it with string. "Let this steep in your bath water for the count of 100, she instructs. "Then remove it before the virtues turn bitter." As she hands you the fragrant bundle, she adds, "And avoid cold drinks afterward. They would shock the opened pores and trap the heat inside your body." This warning highlights another fundamental misconception in medieval medicine: the belief that pores physically opened and closed in response to temperature, potentially trapping bad air or excessive heat inside the body if closed too quickly after bathing. While we now understand that pores don't actually open and close like tiny doors, the practical advice to gradually cool down after heat exposure isn't entirely without merit. As you wait for your scheduled bath time with your herbal sachet in hand, you observe other medical treatments being performed throughout the bathhouse. In one corner, leeches are being applied to a woman's legs to treat what appears to be joint pain, another form of bloodletting, though more targeted than venous cutting. The woman seems remarkably calm about the process, suggesting this is a regular treatment for her. The practitioner applying the leeches handles them with bare hands, moving them directly from a jar to the patient's skin with no concern for cross-contamination. "Leeches draw only the corrupted blood," explains a bystander who notices your expression of disgust. "They're God's perfect remedy. They know exactly where the sickness lies." This common medieval belief gave leeches a nearly magical status in medical treatment. In reality, leech saliva does contain anticoagulants and analgesic compounds that can provide temporary relief for certain conditions, though not for the reasons medieval practitioners believed. Nearby, another medical procedure makes you physically recoil. A man is receiving a treatment for severe hemorrhoids, a common ailment in medieval times due to poor diet, hard physical labor, and sitting on cold surfaces. The treatment involves applying hot iron instruments near the affected area, a procedure based on the belief that heat could drive the hemorrhoids back inside the body. The patient bites down on a leather strap to avoid screaming, while nearby bathers continue their conversations, seemingly unbothered by his obvious distress. In a slightly more private alcove, a pregnant woman is receiving advice from the midwife Margaret, whom you met on your first day. Regular steam baths will ensure an easy birth, Margaret tells her confidently. The heat softens the passages, and the herbs strengthen the womb. She prepares a special herbal infusion for the woman's bath, explaining that it will help position the baby correctly. While some herbal remedies used by medieval midwives did contain active medicinal compounds, many prenatal practices were based on superstition rather than effective medicine. One of the most popular medical treatments offered at the Bathhouse is curative massage, which bears little resemblance to modern therapeutic massage. A muscular male attendant practically walks on a patron's back, using his full body weight to realign the customer's spine with audible cracks. Other massage techniques include vigorous pounding of muscles believed to contain stagnant humors and forceful stretching of limbs to restore proper length to shortened tendons. Your turn for the herbal bath finally arrives, and you're led to a private wooden tub, a luxury that reflects the higher price of medicinal baths compared to regular soaking. The attendant adds several buckets of hot water, and you place your herbal sachet in as instructed. The water quickly takes on a greenish tint and releases a pleasant, calming aroma. Despite your skepticism about medieval medicine, you have to admit the experience is soothing, and the herbs do seem to have a mild, relaxing effect on your muscles. As you soak, the herbalist checks on your progress, examining the color of the water and even its taste, dipping a finger in and touching it to her tongue. Good, she pronounces. The virtues are releasing properly. Soak until the water cools, then rest wrapped in blankets for 1 hour afterward. This post-treatment rest period was a common component of medieval therapeutic bathing, allowing the body to absorb the benefits of the treatment. While you're enjoying your relatively benign herbal bath, a commotion breaks out across the room. A man has fainted in the intense heat of the steam room, a not uncommon occurrence in medieval bathhouses, where temperature regulation was imprecise at best. Rather than moving him to cooler air, the bathhouse attendants apply cold water to his face while keeping him in the hot environment, believing that a sudden temperature change would dangerously shock his system. From your modern perspective, you recognize that he's likely suffering from heat exhaustion and should be removed from the hot environment immediately. But medieval medicine followed different principles. The most unsettling medical practices you observe involve treatments for skin conditions, which were rampant in medieval times due to poor nutrition, limited hygiene, and environmental factors. A young woman with a facial rash is having a mixture of sulfur, lead, and herbal compounds applied to her skin. This caustic concoction will likely cause more harm than good, potentially leading to scarring or lead poisoning. Yet, it was a standard treatment for various skin ailments. The burning sensation means it's drawing out the corruption, the practitioner assures the woman as she winces in pain. Keep it on until sunrise tomorrow, then wash with cold water. You silently calculate the absorption rate of lead through damaged skin and wince yourself. Between these explicit medical treatments, you notice numerous smaller health-related practices integrated into normal bathing routines. Patrons vigorously scrub their skin with abrasive materials, believing they're opening the pores to release trapped illnesses. Others deliberately spend time in the hottest part of the steam room until they're dizzy and faint, considering profuse, sweating a necessary purgation of toxins. Some drink excessive amounts of water during bathing, believing it washes the organs from within, while others avoid drinking entirely, fearing that cold water during bathing will congeal the humors. As your medicinal bath cools, and you prepare to follow the instruction to rest wrapped in blankets, you reflect on the strange mix of harmful and occasionally helpful practices that constitute medieval medical care. Some treatments, like certain herbal preparations or the basic concept of cleanliness, might genuinely improve health outcomes in limited ways. Others are at best ineffective and at worst actively dangerous. The herbalist brings you a warm blanket and directs you to a resting bench. Lie still and let the treatment penetrate, she instructs. Would you like a protective amulet for additional benefit? She holds up a small leather pouch containing what she claims are dried herbs, animal bones, and a blessed coin. Only 3 pennies more. Guards against night vapors that might counteract the bath's benefits. You politely decline the amulet, but many bathhouse patrons enthusiastically embrace such additions to their treatments. The line between medicine, superstition, and religion is practically non-existent in medieval healthcare. Prayers might be prescribed alongside herbal remedies, and astrological considerations often determine treatment timing. Historian Marianne Kowalski has documented extensive evidence of amulets and religious relics being incorporated into medieval medical care, with bathhouse treatments specifically timed to coincide with saints' days, believed to influence certain types of healing. While resting after your treatment, you overhear 2 bath attendants discussing a regular customer who stopped visiting recently. The bloodletting was too frequent, one says quietly. Master Edwin warned him, but he insisted it was necessary for his constitution. The other nods solemnly. 5th time in a fortnight. No body can sustain such drainage. This grim conversation highlights the very real dangers of medieval medical practices. Excessive bloodletting could and did lead to death from blood loss and resulting complications. After completing your prescribed rest period, you feel surprisingly refreshed, likely due to the genuine relaxation benefits of warm herbal bathing, rather than any rebalancing of your bodily humors. As you prepare to leave the treatment area, you pass a young man having his head shaved in preparation for application of a brain-cooling plaster to treat his headaches. The mixture being prepared contains toxic levels of mercury, alongside more benign ingredients like egg whites and rose water. You've survived your introduction to medieval bathhouse medicine, but the experience has made one thing abundantly clear. The combination of incorrect medical theories, unsanitary conditions, and potentially toxic treatments makes the medical aspects of bathhouse culture one of the most dangerous elements you'll face during your week-long stay. The fact that many patrons are regular customers who seem to survive these treatments is a testament more to human resilience than to the efficacy of medieval medicine. On the fourth day of your medieval bathhouse experience, you decide to brave what many consider the heart of the bathing ritual, the steam room. This isn't the gentle, regulated steam experience of modern spas, but a primitive, intense heat treatment that pushes the human body to its limits, and sometimes beyond. As you approach the heavy wooden door leading to the steam chamber, the attendant gives you a warning that's far from reassuring. Not too long for first-timers, she cautions, handing you a small wooden bucket of water. If you feel faint, pour this over your head. Don't try to leave on your own. Many slip and crack their skulls trying to escape when the vapors overtake them. With that cheerful advice, she pushes open the door, releasing a billowing cloud of scalding steam that momentarily takes your breath away. The steam room is essentially a wooden chamber with stone floors, built directly over the bathhouse's main furnace. Unlike modern steam rooms, with their precisely controlled temperature and humidity levels, medieval facilities relied on a much cruder system. Water poured over heated rocks to create unpredictable bursts of steam. The temperature can vary wildly from merely uncomfortable to potentially lethal, with no thermostats or safety shutoffs to prevent dangerous overheating. You step cautiously into the dense fog, your skin immediately responding to the intense heat with prickling discomfort. The air is so thick with moisture that breathing feels like drowning. Through the haze, you can make out the silhouettes of other bathers, sitting or lying on wooden benches arranged in tiers. The higher benches are occupied by seasoned steam bath veterans who can tolerate the most extreme heat that rises to the ceiling. "Come, friend, there's space here," calls a voice from the middle tier. It's Thomas the bookbinder, his face flushed crimson from the heat. "Not up there for your first time," he adds, nodding toward the upper benches where several men lie motionless, occasionally pouring water over themselves. That's for the dedicated steam men. They do this daily. You settle beside Thomas on the middle bench, already feeling sweat pouring from every pore. The wooden bench beneath you is slick with condensation and the accumulated sweat of countless previous users. The air temperature, if you had to guess, must be well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, with humidity approaching 100%. Modern saunas typically operate at lower humidity levels, making this steam room experience particularly challenging for your 21st century physiology. The secret, Thomas tells you between labored breaths, is to control your breathing. Shallow at first, then deeper as your lungs adjust. He demonstrates with exaggerated breathing patterns that you try to mimic, finding it helps slightly with the suffocating feeling. Good for expelling waste humors through the skin. Look, he scrapes his arm with a wooden tool, showing you the gray residue that comes off. That's the corruption leaving the body. What Thomas is showing you is actually a mixture of dead skin cells, dirt, and minerals from sweat, not corruption or waste humors. But the visible evidence seems compelling in this context, and you can understand why medieval people would interpret profuse sweating as a purifying process. There is, in fact, some limited truth to the benefits of sweating for skin cleansing. though not for the reasons medieval bathers believed. As you sit in the stifling heat, trying to acclimate, you notice the various steam room rituals being performed around you. Some bathers periodically whip themselves or each other with bundles of leafy birch branches, a practice believed to improve circulation and to physically beat out impurities. Others apply handfuls of honey or salt to their skin before scraping it off, taking layers of dead skin with it. The floor beneath the benches is slick with these substances, along with copious amounts of sweat, creating a slipping hazard that has clearly caused injuries based on the visible bloodstains on some of the stone edges. Watch the steam master, Thomas nudges you, pointing toward a burly attendant who approaches the central pit, where glowing stones radiate intense heat. With theatrical flourish, the attendant pours a ladle of water over the stones, creating an explosive hiss and a fresh wave of scalding steam that rises to fill the chamber. The temperature instantly spikes, causing several bathers to gasp or cover their faces. One man on the lower bench makes a dash for the door, unable to tolerate the sudden increase in heat. Water from the sacred spring, explains an elderly man sitting nearby, his skin so accustomed to the heat that it barely shows a reaction to the temperature that has you gasping. Brings special blessing to the steam, cures joint ailments, and opens the channels of sight. While the sacred nature of the water is questionable, there is historical evidence that specific water sources were indeed preferred for steam baths in medieval times. Some natural springs contained minerals believed to have medicinal properties when vaporized. The minutes drag by in the oppressive heat, each feeling like an hour. You've lost track of time in the disorienting environment, with no clocks or natural light to orient yourself. This temporal confusion was actually an intentional part of the steam bath experience. Medieval bathers believed that losing awareness of ordinary time helped the body enter a healing state separate from daily concerns. Just when you think you can't endure another moment, a commotion erupts near the upper benches. A man who has clearly spent too long in the extreme heat has fainted and slipped from his bench, falling heavily to the tier below. Several bathers rush to assist him, carrying his limp form toward the door. The steam master barely glances up from his station. Such incidents are apparently common enough not to cause general alarm. Happens at least once daily, Thomas informs you with disturbing casualness. Usually, they revive quickly in the cool room. Occasionally not. This offhand reference to fatal heat exposure sends a chill through you despite the sweltering temperature. Historians have indeed documented numerous cases of death in medieval steam baths, primarily from heat stroke, suffocation, or head injuries sustained during falls by disoriented bathers. The primitive ventilation system contributes significantly to the dangers. Unlike modern facilities with mechanical air exchange systems, medieval steam rooms relied primarily on the door being occasionally opened to release some of the hottest air. Carbon dioxide could build up in crowded steam chambers, leading to headaches, confusion, and in extreme cases, loss of consciousness symptoms that bathers often misinterpreted as the beneficial purging of brain humors, rather than the warning signs of oxygen deprivation. As if reading your thoughts, the steam master approaches the stones again, this time adding a handful of herbs before pouring on more water. The resulting steam carries a pungent, medicinal aroma that partially masks the underlying smell of sweat and unwashed bodies. Juniper and meadowsweet, Thomas identifies the scents. Good for clearing the lungs. While his explanation of their effects is based on humoral theory rather than actual pharmacology, juniper does have mild antimicrobial properties, and meadowsweet contains salicylates related to aspirin, potentially providing some genuine therapeutic benefit when inhaled. The herbal steam, while pleasant smelling, makes the air feel even thicker and more difficult to breathe. Your head begins to swim, and dark spots appear at the edges of your vision, classic signs of heat exhaustion that medieval bathers would have interpreted as evidence the treatment was working. Thomas, noticing your distress, pushes the wooden bucket of water into your hands. Pour it over your head now, he instructs firmly. You've had enough for a first session. You comply, feeling immediate but temporary relief as the relatively cooler water cascades over your overheated body. With Thomas's assistance, you make your way unsteadily toward the door, careful to avoid slipping on the hazardous floor. Emerging from the steam room feels like escaping from drowning. The main bathing hall, which earlier seemed uncomfortably warm and humid, now feels blissfully cool by comparison. You gulp in the fresher air, your pulse gradually slowing from its racing pace. An attendant approaches with a rough cloth to help dry your sweat-drenched body, explaining that moving directly to the cool outdoor air without this intermediate cooling period could cause seizure of the humors, a medieval concept roughly corresponding to modern understanding of how rapid temperature changes stress the cardiovascular system. As you recover on a bench, sipping water provided by a young attendant, you observe other bathers emerging from the steam room in various states of distress. One elderly man is being supported between two attendants, his face alarmingly gray despite the heat exposure. Another exits looking euphoric, declaring loudly that his joint pain has miraculously disappeared, a temporary effect of heat-induced endorphin release and vasodilation that he attributes to successful steaming out of the cold humors. You did well for first time, Thomas tells you as he emerges some time later, looking considerably less affected than you feel. Many can't tolerate even half as long. This backhanded compliment doesn't do much for your pride, but it does highlight an important aspect of medieval bathing culture. Regular patrons built up significant heat tolerance through repeated exposure, allowing them to endure conditions that would be dangerous or unbearable for newcomers. A bath attendant approaches, offering a cooling draft of herbal liquid that tastes primarily of mint and something bitter you can't identify. Restores balance after the heating, she explains, prevents the humors from becoming overexcited. While the medieval explanation is incorrect, the drink does provide welcome hydration and the mint offers a genuinely refreshing sensation. As your body temperature gradually returns to normal, you reflect on the steam room experience. Despite the very real dangers of heat stroke, falls on slippery surfaces, potential suffocation from poor ventilation, and occasional scalding from direct contact with steam or heated surfaces, medieval steam baths did offer some genuine health benefits alongside their risks. The intense sweating helped cleanse the skin in an era before regular bathing was common. The heat could temporarily relieve joint pain, and the whole process likely killed some external parasites that plagued medieval populations. Nevertheless, you've gained a new appreciation for modern safety standards and precise temperature controls. The medieval steam bath represents one of the most physically challenging aspects of bathhouse culture for a modern person to endure, a practice where the line between therapeutic treatment and physical danger blurs considerably. You've survived this particular medieval bathhouse challenge, but the experience leaves you with a healthy respect for the resilience of people who considered such intense heat exposure a normal part of their health regimen. Before leaving the recovery area, you overhear two regular patrons discussing a steam room tragedy from the previous month. A young man who insisted on proving his endurance by remaining in the hottest part of the steam chamber long after his companions had left. He was found unconscious and couldn't be revived. Rather than questioning the safety of the practice itself, they attribute his death to his imbalanced constitution and improper preparation before the steam bath. The inherent dangers of the practice go unrecognized in a culture that lacks both modern medical understanding and contemporary safety expectations. By the 5th day of your medieval bathhouse experience, your body has begun to alert you to some unwelcome companions that have taken up residence on your skin. The first sign comes as an insistent itch between your shoulder blades that no amount of scratching seems to satisfy. This isn't just the normal irritation from coarse medieval soap or mineral-rich water. It's the unmistakable sensation of something living on you. Welcome to one of the most inevitable hazards of medieval bathhouse culture: parasites and pests. Everyone gets them eventually, Margaret, the midwife, tells you matter-of-factly when she notices you discreetly scratching. She's sharing your tub today, along with an elderly man who appears to be dozing in the warm water. The bath lice prefer the cleanest flesh. Consider it a compliment. This dubious honor does little to relieve your discomfort or the creeping horror of knowing tiny organisms are making a home on your body. Bath lice weren't actually a distinct species, but rather regular human lice that thrived in the warm, moist environment of bathhouses with their abundance of hosts in close proximity. The communal nature of medieval bathing created perfect conditions for parasites to move easily from person to person. No amount of social status or wealth could fully protect bathers from infestation, a medieval democratization of misery that crossed all social boundaries. Here, turn around, Margaret offers, seeing your futile attempts to reach the itchy spot on your back. With practiced efficiency, she examines the area. Not too many yet. Best to catch them early. She calls over a young bath attendant and instructs her to bring a special comb and a small pot of ointment. The fine-toothed delousing comb the attendant brings is made of bone, its teeth set closely enough together to scrape parasites, and their eggs from skin and hair. These combs are among the most common artifacts found in medieval archaeological sites, testifying to the ubiquity of the lice problem across Europe. Some particularly fine examples were carved from ivory or precious materials, indicating that even the wealthy needed these tools. We'll start with the comb, then apply the ointment, Margaret explains, as the attendant begins methodically scraping the teeth of the comb across your back, collecting the tiny parasites. The mercury in it kills what the comb doesn't catch. Your modern knowledge of mercury toxicity makes this cure sound potentially worse than the problem. But before you can object, the attendant is already applying the gray, foul-smelling substance to your skin. Leave it on until tomorrow, she instructs. It works slowly, but thoroughly. While mercury-based treatments did indeed kill parasites, they also caused mercury poisoning with repeated use. Many regular bathhouse patrons suffered chronic low-level mercury poisoning from these treatments, experiencing symptoms like tremors, memory problems, and kidney damage that they would never connect to their delousing routines. As the attendant works on your back, you notice several other patrons receiving similar treatments. Delousing is conducted openly, without embarrassment or privacy. In the medieval mind, parasites weren't associated with poor hygiene or social stigma the way they often are in modern times. They were simply an expected hazard of daily life, particularly in communal settings like bathhouses. The trick is to treat them before they spread to your bedding, advises the elderly man sharing your tub, who has awakened from his doze and observed your treatment. Once they inhabit your mattress, only burning will truly remove them. This dire advice highlights another aspect of parasite control in medieval times. Infestations often required destruction of valuable household items that couldn't be effectively treated with available methods. Lice aren't the only unwelcome creatures you encounter in the bathhouse. As you soak in your tub, something small and dark scurries along the edge of the wooden rim, a bath rat, well fed on scraps dropped by patrons, and apparently unafraid of human presence. The bathhouse cats, kept specifically to control the rodent population, seem to have reached some kind of détente with this particular specimen, allowing it to go about its business unmolested. Rats and mice were constant companions in medieval buildings of all kinds, but bathhouses offered particularly favorable conditions for them: warmth, moisture, food scraps, and plenty of hiding places in the wooden structures. These rodents weren't just an aesthetic issue. They carried fleas that transmitted diseases, including bubonic plague, making their presence a genuine health hazard beyond the obvious disgust factor. The rats keep to themselves mostly. Thomas, the bookbinder, assures you when he notices your alarmed expression as the rodent disappears into a crack between floor stones. It's the water beetles you want to watch for nasty bite on them. As if summoned by his warning, you notice several dark, shiny insects swimming in the murky water of your tub. About the size of your thumbnail, these water beetles normally inhabit natural bodies of water, but found medieval bathhouses with their constant moisture and ample food sources an ideal habitat. When you instinctively recoil from the insects, both Thomas and Margaret laugh at your reaction. They don't usually go for living flesh, Margaret says, casually scooping one out of the water and flicking it onto the floor. They prefer the dead skin that floats in the water. This explanation, while meant to be reassuring, only reinforces your awareness of what's actually in the bathwater with you. Dead skin cells, sweat, oils, and various bodily emissions from multiple users. The insect ecosystem of the medieval bathhouse extended well beyond beetles and rats. Fleas thrived in the wooden structures and fabric coverings of resting benches. Bedbugs, though not yet the resistant strains that plague modern cities, found ample hiding places in the cracks of wooden tubs and benches. Various species of mites made homes in the damp corners and occasionally on human hosts. Even cockroaches, those eternal survivors, skittered along the edges of rooms where food was served to bathhouse patrons. As you exit your tub and prepare for steam session, you notice another patron being treated for a different parasitic problem. Skin-burrowing mites, known in medieval times as bath itch, and in modern medicine as scabies. The affected areas, red, intensely itchy, with characteristic burrow lines visible on the skin, are being treated with a sulfur-based ointment that, while unpleasant, is actually one of the more effective medieval remedies. Sulfur does indeed kill the mites, though the application process is uncomfortable and malodorous. At that last summer, Thomas comments, noting your observation of the treatment. Worse than lice by far, the crawling under the skin is maddening. He unconsciously scratches his arm at the memory. Took 3 treatments before the sulfur killed them all. Scabies was a particularly common bathhouse affliction, spreading easily through the prolonged skin-to-skin contact that occurred in crowded soaking tubs and steam rooms. The bathhouse staff wage a constant battle against these pests. You observe junior attendants scrubbing tubs with vinegar solutions between uses by higher-paying customers, a practice that does have some mild antimicrobial benefits. Other preventative measures include strewing certain herbs thought to repel insects. Wormwood, tansy, and lavender appear on windowsills and in corners of rooms. While these botanical remedies had limited effectiveness against a determined parasite population, some did contain natural compounds with genuine insect-repelling properties. The worst are the summer months, Greta tells you as she oversees the cleaning process. The heat brings them all out. We burn sulfur candles weekly then, though the smell drives some customers away. Sulfur fumigation was indeed one of the more effective pest control methods available in medieval times, though as Greta notes, the process left the bathhouse smelling of rotten eggs for days afterward. Even the water itself could harbor microscopic threats invisible to medieval eyes. Various protozoa and bacteria thrived in the warm, nutrition-rich soup of bathwater, causing skin infections and occasional gastrointestinal illness when accidentally ingested. Without understanding germ theory, medieval bathers had no concept of these microscopic threats and took no effective precautions against them. Despite all these challenges, medieval people simply accepted parasites and pests as an unavoidable part of life. Contemporary medical texts discuss treatments for various parasitic afflictions matter-of-factly, without the horror modern people might feel at the prospect of hosting lice or mites. This different psychological relationship with parasites, seeing them as unpleasant, but normal rather than as exceptional violations of bodily integrity, helped medieval people cope with what would seem intolerable conditions to most modern individuals. As your day in the bathhouse continues, you become increasingly aware of every unexplained itch and skin sensation. The psychological impact of knowing about these parasites sometimes exceeds the physical discomfort they cause, a form of what modern doctors might call phantom parasite syndrome, where awareness of potential infestation creates persistent sensations of crawling and itching, even in unaffected areas. By evening, the mercury ointment on your back has begun to work, unfortunately not just on the lice, but also on your skin, which is developing an angry red rash in response to the toxic treatment. When you show this reaction to Margaret, she nods knowingly. That means it's working, driving out the corruption along with the lice. She recommends leaving it on despite the discomfort, an approach that reflects the medieval medical principle that effective treatments often caused visible reactions or pain. As you prepare to leave for the day, you notice several patrons undergoing more intensive delousing procedures in a side room dedicated to parasite control. Here, those with more severe infestations have their entire bodies treated with various concoctions, some involving not just mercury, but also arsenic compounds, effective at killing parasites, but with potentially lethal consequences for the hosts if used too liberally. One unfortunate man is having his head completely shaved, a last resort for particularly persistent head lice that couldn't be controlled by less drastic measures. The itching from both the parasites and their cure follows you out of the bathhouse, a constant reminder of the microscopic battle taking place on your skin. You've now experienced firsthand one of the most universal aspects of medieval bathhouse culture, one that affected kings and peasants alike, and that no amount of social standing or wealth could fully prevent. These unwelcome companions represent yet another reason why modern humans, accustomed to relatively parasite-free existences, would struggle to endure even a week in medieval bathing conditions. That night, as you try to sleep despite the persistent itching, you reflect that, while many aspects of medieval bathhouse culture were class-dependent, parasites were the great equalizers, tiny democratic invaders that treated all human hosts with the same opportunistic interest, regardless of their place in the social hierarchy. As your sixth day at the medieval bathhouse dawns, you've somehow managed to survive the questionable hygiene practices, the social hierarchy of cleanliness, and even those parasites lurking in the warm, moist corners. But what you haven't yet experienced is perhaps the most dangerous element of all: the swirling undercurrent of scandals and secrets that permeate these steamy halls. Walking into the main bathing chamber today, you immediately sense something's different. The usual chatter has dropped to whispers, and people are huddled in small groups, their eyes darting suspiciously around the room. You've unwittingly stepped into a hotbed of medieval gossip, a communication network that spreads faster than those skin infections you narrowly avoided on day 3. The bathhouse, you see, isn't just where people come to achieve whatever passes for cleanliness in the 14th century. It's the unofficial intelligence headquarters of the entire town. Remember how the bath attendants seemed to know everyone's business? That wasn't coincidental. These establishments serve as the medieval equivalent of social media, complete with questionable privacy settings and absolutely no fact-checking. You settle into a wooden tub, trying to appear nonchalant as a noblewoman leans conspiratorially toward her companion in the adjacent bath. "Did you hear about the merchant guild master?" she whispers, though not quietly enough. "Spotted leaving the bathhouse after hours with the silversmith's wife." You pretend not to listen while mentally adding this tidbit to your growing collection of information that could get you killed if repeated to the wrong person. Historians still argue whether bathhouses were deliberately designed with thin walls and strategic alcoves, specifically to facilitate eavesdropping, or if that was just a happy architectural accident that medieval gossips exploited to maximum effect. Either way, you're beginning to understand why kings and queens would sometimes dispatch spies to local bathhouses rather than foreign courts. The intelligence gathered here is far more comprehensive and unfiltered. A bath attendant approaches, offering you a special herbal rinse guaranteed to prevent baldness and improve virility. As he applies it to your scalp, he casually mentions how the mayor's son was caught last week trying to smuggle bath tokens to sell on the black market. You nod politely while your scalp tingles alarmingly from whatever concoction he's applying. Is the tingling the herbs working, or the first sign of the chemical burn that will claim what's left of your dignity? Hard to say. What becomes increasingly clear as the day progresses is that the bathhouse operates under its own complex system of alliances and grudges. The woman who scrubs backs in the east corner refuses to serve anyone connected to the Candlemaker's Guild due to dispute that allegedly began 17 years ago over improperly rendered tallow. The bathmaster has an ongoing feud with the local tavern keeper about water rights that has escalated to include 3 generations of both families. And you, the newcomer, are being sized up by everyone to determine where your loyalties might lie in these Byzantine social structures. By midday, you've become unwittingly entangled in bathhouse politics after accepting a towel from an attendant who, unbeknownst to you, is considered a direct challenge to another attendant's territory. The glares you receive make the scalding steam feel positively chilly by comparison. In medieval society, there's no such thing as an innocent action, especially not in the politically charged atmosphere of the public bath. One particularly fascinating aspect of bathhouse scandals involves the secret messages, sometimes transmitted by bath tokens. In the Swiss town of Baden, evidence suggests that carved wooden bath tokens occasionally contained hollow centers where tiny notes could be hidden, creating a covert communication system for everything from illicit romance to business deals to actual espionage. You examine your own bath token with new suspicion, wondering what secrets it might have carried before reaching your hands. As afternoon slides into evening, you witness a true bathhouse scandal unfold in real time. A local official enters wearing an unusually opulent bathing cap, clearly designed to flaunt his wealth rather than serve any practical purpose. Within minutes, whispers circulate that the cap's gold threading was purchased with misappropriated tax funds meant for repairing the town well. By the time the official finishes his bath, the rumor has evolved to include 3 missing tax collectors and a mysterious midnight journey to a neighboring principality. You watch in fascination as reputation assassination occurs in real time, wondering how much, if any, of the story contains actual truth. The truly remarkable thing about bathhouse scandals is their remarkable durability. A particularly juicy piece of gossip that originates in these steamy rooms might circulate through town for decades, evolving with each retelling, until it eventually becomes indistinguishable from established local history. Future generations might reference the scandal of the golden bathing cap without any recollection of its origins in this very room, on this very day. As night approaches and the bathhouse prepares to transition to its notorious after-hours activities, an attendant pulls you aside with urgent whispers about staying away from the private chamber behind the 3rd archway. Apparently, a meeting is scheduled there between representatives of 2 merchant families arranging a marriage alliance that would combine their wool monopolies. The fact that both families publicly claim to despise each other makes this secret negotiation all the more valuable as information currency. You retreat to your sleeping quarters that night with the uncomfortable realization that you've accumulated more dangerous knowledge in one day than most medieval peasants acquire in a lifetime. The bathhouse has revealed itself as not just a place of dubious hygiene and questionable medical practices, but as a political battleground where reputations are made and destroyed between soaks. You make a mental note to speak as little as possible tomorrow. In a world without modern privacy laws or defamation suits, loose lips in a bathhouse really could sink ships, or more likely, get you introduced to the business end of a dagger in a dark alley. Dawn breaks on your 7th day, but something's amiss at the bathhouse. The usual morning crowd is conspicuously absent, and a harried-looking bath attendant, the same one who applied that suspicious hair tonic yesterday, is turning people away at the door. With mounting dread, you hear fragments of conversation. Spread through the water, 3 cases already, and most alarmingly, quarantine. Welcome to everyone's favorite medieval bathhouse experience, the disease outbreak. You've managed to survive questionable hygiene practices parasites, suspicious food, and political intrigue. But now, you face the final boss of medieval bathing, the near-inevitable spread of contagion in warm, wet, communal spaces filled with people whose understanding of germ theory is non-existent. Pressing closer, which in retrospect will prove to be a terrible decision, you gather that 3 regular patrons have fallen ill with similar symptoms after visiting the bathhouse yesterday. The local barber surgeon, who, remember, is the same person who handles bloodletting, tooth extraction, and that disturbingly invasive cure for kidney stones you witnessed on day 5, has declared the establishment a potential source of contagion. You should be terrified. After all, in medieval Europe, disease outbreaks routinely wiped out substantial percentages of the population. The bathhouse, with its shared water and communal spaces, provides an ideal environment for transmission of everything from minor skin infections to life-threatening illnesses. That small cut you got from the rough edge of a wooden tub 2 days ago now seems less like a minor inconvenience and more like a potential entry point for whatever medieval horror is currently working its way through the local population. What happens next follows a pattern depressingly familiar throughout medieval European history. The town council meets hastily to discuss the situation, with opinions divided between those who fear disease and those who fear economic consequences of a bathhouse closure. Historians still argue whether medieval authorities truly understood the connection between bathhouses and disease transmission, or if their periodic crackdowns were more motivated by moral concerns about the activities that often occurred in these establishments. Either way, the result was the same. Bathhouses were frequent targets for closure during times of epidemic. By midday, notices are being nailed to posts throughout town, announcing a temporary closure of the bathhouse until the current affliction has passed. This terse official announcement sparks wild speculation. You overhear at least 7 different theories about the nature of the illness from people gathered outside the bathhouse doors, ranging from the relatively plausible contaminated water to the decidedly not evil spirits disturbed when the bath master expanded the hot room last spring. Amusingly, though not for the victims, one of the most common responses to bathhouse-related illness was to prescribe more bathing, just in different water. A 13th century physician's manuscript recommends that those affected by bath fever should seek healing in natural hot springs instead, which would be great advice if the problem were the bathhouse itself, rather than the fundamental medieval misunderstanding of how disease works. As afternoon wears on, your anxiety grows. You've spent 6 full days immersed in exactly the same waters as everyone else. You've breathed the same steam, sat on the same benches, and been touched by the same attendants' hands. The mathematical probability that you've been exposed to whatever is causing the outbreak approaches certainty. Now, it's just a waiting game to see if your modern immune system can handle whatever medieval microbe is making the rounds. The situation deteriorates further when a town crier announces that anyone who visited the bathhouse in the past 3 days should avoid contact with others. This medieval attempt at contact tracing might be well-intentioned, but it immediately transforms you into a pariah. The innkeeper where you've been staying suddenly finds urgent business in another part of town, and people step aside when you walk down the street, making the sign against evil as you pass. What makes this experience particularly authentic is that medieval bathhouse closures due to disease were remarkably common. Archaeological and textual evidence shows that many European bathhouses operated on cycles of popularity, panic, and prohibition. A bathhouse might thrive for years until an outbreak, real or perceived, caused its closure, only to reopen under new management once collective memory of the incident had faded. By evening, rumors circulate that the illness affecting former bathhouse patrons causes symptoms including fever, skin discoloration, and in a detail that seems suspiciously embellished, with each retelling spontaneous recitation of blasphemous phrases in unknown languages. You check your skin obsessively for unusual marks and silently recite prayers just to confirm you can still control your own speech. One particularly fascinating fringe theory that emerges during this crisis suggests that the illness might be connected to the new soap imported from Marseille that the bathhouse began using 2 weeks ago. This actually contains a kernel of historical truth. Medieval people did sometimes correctly identify new products or practices as disease vectors, even without understanding the underlying mechanisms of infection. As night falls on what was supposed to be your final day at the medieval bathhouse, you find yourself isolated in a corner of the town square, avoided by locals and with nowhere to sleep. The closure of the bathhouse has not only deprived you of your planned final soak, but has also branded you as a potential disease carrier. The irony that you came to experience medieval cleanliness only to end up identified as a source of contagion is not lost on you. A physician wearing a bird-like plague mask approaches, though maintaining a careful distance. He recommends a preventative regimen of vinegar gargles, specific prayer recitations at sunrise and sunset, and wearing a small pouch of dried herbs around your neck. This advice represents the height of 14th century medical response to infectious disease, a blend of practical measures that might accidentally help. The vinegar has some antiseptic properties, religious intervention, and aromatic talismans that do absolutely nothing except make you smell like an experimental medieval potpourri. As you prepare to spend the night under the stars, clutching your useless herb pouch, you realize the ultimate historical truth about medieval bathhouses. Their periodic closures due to disease outbreaks were the beginning of their eventual decline throughout much of Europe. By the 16th century, fear of contagion, especially syphilis, which was ravaging the continent, would lead to widespread bathhouse closures. Many would never reopen, marking the end of the communal bathing tradition that had thrived for centuries. The very institution that promised cleanliness ultimately couldn't escape its association with disease. Morning arrives, and with it comes an unexpected turn of events. The bathhouse crisis has prompted intervention from a higher authority. The local monastery has dispatched brothers skilled in herbalism and healing to investigate the outbreak. After examining afflicted bathhouse patrons, they've determined the illness is not, in fact, the dreaded plague or any other major contagion, but rather an adverse reaction to those suspicious. Rejuvenating minerals the bath master added to the water earlier in the week. You know, the ones that turned the water that concerning shade of green you mentioned to no one, not wanting to appear ignorant of medieval bathing practices. With this less catastrophic diagnosis, the bathhouse reopens for limited service, with the main pool drained and refilled with fresh water. Somehow, against all medieval odds, you've been granted the opportunity for one final soak before concluding your week-long immersion in historical bathing culture. You approach this unexpected reprieve with equal parts gratitude and trepidation. The bathhouse you enter today bears little resemblance to the bustling social hub you first encountered 7 days ago. Most locals are still staying away, frightened by the recent health scare. The cavernous main chamber echoes with the sounds of water dripping, and the occasional cough from the few brave or foolhardy souls who, like you, have decided that cleanliness, or whatever approximation of it exists here, is worth the risk. You slide into the newly filled main pool, noticing immediately that the water lacks the usual array of floating debris and suspicious film on the surface. This is probably the cleanest the bathhouse has been since it opened, ironically prompted by its connection to disease. The bath attendant, the same one who shared all those scandals with you yesterday, explains that the monastery brothers insisted on scrubbing every surface with vinegar and replacing all the bath linens before allowing the establishment to reopen. As you settle into your final soak, you find yourself reflecting on your improbable survival of a week in medieval bathing culture. You've navigated social hierarchies more complex than modern corporate politics, endured medical treatments that bordered on torture, consumed bathhouse food that defied both identification and digestion, and accumulated secrets that could topple small fiefdoms if whispered in the right ears. The steam rises around you, and for once, the usual cacophony of voices is absent, replaced by a nearly meditative silence. In this moment of unexpected tranquility, you can almost understand why medieval people cherished their bathhouses despite all the dangers. In a world of constant hardship and limited privacy, these steamy chambers offered rare moments of physical comfort and social connection. The bath attendant approaches with a final herbal infusion for your soak, this one certified safe by the monastery healers, and you detect a hint of lavender and chamomile rising with the steam. Your muscles, tense from a week of constant vigilance against everything from falling roof tiles to waterborne parasites, finally begin to relax. In the gentle quiet of this final bath, you realize that what made medieval bathhouses simultaneously so dangerous and so essential was their fundamentally human character. They were microcosms of medieval society itself, hierarchical superstitious, medically questionable, politically complex, occasionally scandalous, and perpetually balanced on the edge of disaster. Yet they persisted for centuries because they fulfilled needs beyond mere cleanliness. Community, tradition, and brief respite from the harshness of medieval existence. The water cools gradually around you, and the filtered afternoon light through the high windows begins to dim. Your week in the medieval bathhouse is coming to an end. You've experienced history in its most intimate, immersive form, not through books or artifacts, but through the lived reality of one of humanity's most fundamental practices, the pursuit of cleanliness. As you finally rise from the water, your skin wrinkled from prolonged soaking, the bath attendant wraps you in a fresh linen cloth. "Will you return tomorrow?" she asks softly, her voice barely audible above the gentle splashing of water. You smile, but say nothing. You've survived a week that would have broken most modern constitutions. You've bathed in water of questionable provenance, breathed steam-laden with medieval microbes, and ingested substances that would alarm modern toxicologists. Against all odds and historical precedent, you've emerged relatively unscathed from your bathhouse adventure. As you step out into the cooling evening air, the familiar medieval scents of wood smoke and livestock mingling with the herbal fragrances clinging to your skin, you carry with you not just memories, but a profound appreciation for modern plumbing, private bathrooms, and the revolutionary concept of not sharing bathwater with strangers. Some historical experiences, you decide, are best left firmly in the past, appreciated from a distance, but never, ever repeated. Sleep well, knowing you've survived what most modern humans never could. A full week in a medieval bathhouse. Your dreams tonight will be clean, even if the history wasn't.